Alexis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. So, where are you joining us from?
Right now, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee.
Is that home?
It is, yeah.
Okay. I love Nashville. We were just talking off the air. SCI has, I think they signed a 10-year contract there, Safari Club International. So, back every winter,
Yeah,
and Nashville's a cool town for sure.
yeah,
Uh,
that's good.
Coming up to Tennessee here in a couple weeks to go turkey hunting.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Well, that's a good reason to come to Tennessee for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so, First of all, I mean, you've got a lot going on, just on like what you do for a living. I don't know what is more your focus, like your musical career or life as a political commentator, activist? Tell us about
It's
yourself.
yeah, so it's so funny because I thought that, I started out in music. Obviously, I've always been very patriotic, very, interested in politics, but um definitely just I was in the country music lane and I started to see some things come up that ended up affecting me where, things that seem like they should not be partisan at all. I was doing organization work with veterans, and I had an American flag in my bio. And I was being told that that was viewed as very partisan, and I needed to stop doing those things. And this was as we kind of came into the 20. I know, no, you like seriously, they said it,
Veterans and
they
the
meant it.
flag
Yeah,
is oh,
like
so they're like, oh, you're a conservative.
yes,
Why?
exactly.
Because why would a Democrat ever fly an American flag?
Right. It should be a dead giveaway. And so, kind of going into the 2016 election, I thought, well, this is really important. Like, I don't think that I can be silent about this. I see a lot of people on the left screaming about their politics, and they're allowed to say that, we hate your politics, we hate guns, we hate all these different things. Meanwhile, I can't say anything. So I thought that was pretty ridiculous. At the same time, I was in college for business and political science. I went to Belmont in Nashville, here in Nashville, which is a private Christian school, and I thought that I would be relatively safe there. As far as politics went, turns out I was not.
Mm.
I love school. I've always gotten A's, really loved it, and I was given an F in comparative politics, which is basically like, free market good, dictatorship bad. It's pretty cut and dry. It's kind of a similar issue to putting an American flag in your bio. And so when I started to see these things become issues that not only affected me, but I noticed affected people around me, other students had no idea how to deal with it. And then I graduated during COVID. And so it was really a gloves off moment for me. I started speaking up and found an audience that honestly I think needed it and I needed it. So I believe that these things can go hand in hand. For a minute there, I thought that I was going to have to, not do music in lieu of the things that I was saying politically, but
Mm.
America really is on board with kind of the leave us alone government and let us do our thing page. So I'm super happy to be able to continue to do both. So to answer your long story long, to answer your question, they kind of go hand in hand for me. I just got
Uh,
back in town yesterday from performing at a Young America's Foundation event. I work with Prager U. We're working on some country music stuff there. And so I really am fortunate to get to keep all the plates spinning and talking about things that I believe in.
right on, right on. So was that your debut LP? I was
Yeah,
looking on your Spotify channel and I was checking out some of your music. And it seems like you have a lot of singles and then you have that LP.
yeah, Grit was the first piece of work altogether that I put out there. It's so hard with this market, and especially when you're not on a label. The thing you get with labels is radio play. So
Hmm.
if you're dropping singles out there, it's a much more efficient system. Unfortunately, I don't think it's very conducive to pieces of art and works of music. And I like good old-fashioned country music, and you sit down and listen to an album. So I was excited to get that out there and working on some more to put out soon.
Okay, awesome. And you've gotten to sing, going back to the patriotism, you've
Mhm.
gotten to sing the national anthem at some pretty cool events.
Yeah, it was really fun. I've always, anytime I get to sing the national anthem, I feel so fortunate. But in the last, of course, the campaign season, it was really fun. Got to sing the anthem at some Trump rallies and at some various organizational events, patriotism, organization, just all of those things in the last season have been really fun.
Awesome. Um, Talk about Prager U. I follow all of their stuff, all their social stuff. Big fan. How did you get plugged in with them?
So I had started to talk to them because they had reached out about doing a stories of us about specifically my college experience. They do these kind of biographical 15-minute interviews where you explain. I think it started with how people came from being Democrats to, having holding conservative values or going liberal to conservative values is really the turn that they started with. But then they realized that people have all sorts of different stories. And so they had landed on hearing about my college experience and how I had to get that F that I was telling y'all about
Mm,
changed over into a passing grade. And I had to have tons of meetings about it. And I went through my college experience really figuring out ways to get through it without ever writing anything that compromised my values. I hear so many students now say, well, I just wrote this paper to get them off my back. And I think to myself, oh no, 20 years from now, when they're saying something related to their job or they hold a position that they can't have something that's completely opposing things that they believe now. They wrote what they thought was an arbitrary essay in college, and it's going to come around to bite them in the butt. And plus, just don't write things as a general rule that you don't believe in. It's really
mm,
important, I think, to hold your values, even in the seemingly smallest of scenarios.
mm-hmm.
But all of that to say, they found my story. They wanted to talk about it. They do a lot of advice for high school and college students. And so when we did the sit down, it just kind of snowballed into something broader. They had worked with other personalities. They have some awesome personalities on their roster, but I really cared about the corner of, economy, constitution, some of the things that I think just base American, educational aspects that I really wanted to cover on their page, and they loved it. And so we just kept working together, and so we've continued that ever since. We're working on some fun documentary stuff that I'm really excited to announce pretty soon, and yeah, they've been great.
I I think I think a lot of Democrats that voted for Trump, traditional Democrats, feel like they didn't really leave the Democratic Party so much as the party left them, like with all of the woke ideologies, the gross overspending,
Absolutely.
the open border. Uh, Most Democrats don't want an open border. It turns out, wow, shocking, right?
Right.
But yet the party jumped the shark and is only beholden to the party. It seems like to me like they don't care what their voting base wants at all.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely right. And it's crazy because it used to be explained to me, this is how my parents told me about the two-party system. They said, okay, here are these two parties. They both have good goals for the United States. They want the best for the United States. They just have different ways of getting there. And I said, okay, well, that makes sense. Everyone has to have ideas. You have to have, meeting of the minds. And then rather quickly, to your point, it devolved into, well, you have to support all of these things that are probably either against your values or morals, or that you just simply don't want to pay for in your tax dollars in order to be a member of this party,
Mm-hmm.
or subscribe to such and such. And so I think a lot of the Elon Democrats, the left-leaning center, I completely agree. They got totally ditched by ideologies and big political money and big political funding. And I think that ultimately we keep seeing them pedal in this same direction that lost them the election, which is fascinating to me because no think tank would advise that in a normal, in any normal circumstances. And so I guess I keep wondering when they're going to figure it out, or which strategy companies are still making money off of telling them to go off the deep end. But, I'm grateful that people have found a center and that they have found common ground. And hopefully we can dig our way out with a lot of collaboration, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, you see traditional Democrats like Bill Maher, for example, who's always criticizing the party. You see New York Mayor Eric Adams just left and became an independent because, well, what happened to him? Treated
Right.
like crap once he said, hey, this illegal thing, the immigration is not working out for my city anymore. Oh, next thing you know, they like pulled a Trump and was like, maybe there's some sexual accusations we can make from years
Right.
past, you know. So they eat their own. You step out of line, the party eats their own. That's why he was like, I'm out, you know, like enough is enough. You see, and you see people like Van Jones on ESPN. He's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not ESPN, CNN. He's like,
Yeah.
it turns out calling everyone that you disagree with a Nazi wasn't the greatest choice. Like, of course, like, oh, well, no kidding, you
Right.
know,
As
like,
it would turn out.
so they are, some of them are calling it out, but then you made a good point. You said they keep going back to the same well. And now I'm seeing stuff on social media about a potential AOC Bernie Sanders ticket in 2028. Please do it and just rename it the Democratic Socialist Party of America. Like,
Honestly, I keep seeing those things too, and I agree. I'm like, you know what? If y'all want to do that, you go right ahead. You know, more of what people decided they hated, and
yeah.
these rallies that they're starting up. Yeah, I definitely see it going in that direction to Gavin Newsom's great dismay.
Yeah.
But
Oh, now
I
all of a
don't.
sudden he's a moderate, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, he's doing his very purple podcast now. He's trying to be very thoughtful about it. But
Yeah. Well, you know what? Day late and a dollar short, dude. I mean, there's so many clips of everything that you've said and done for the last decade, and I just,
yeah,
but the cupboard's bare. Like, I don't know what direction they're gonna go to. They don't have any good options, really.
no,
Uh,
their bench is totally empty. Their roster is just I don't know where I'd tell them to go at this point. You know,
mhm.
the AOC and Bernie at least get social media clicks, which is what they thought would win them, of course, the last election and didn't. So I don't know where they're to go at this point, but we'll
Mhm.
see. They'll find somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as your personal life, and I mean, this is all over your social media feed, so I don't think it's anything we can't talk about. But your boyfriend is the FBI, the new director of the FBI, Kash Patel.
Yep.
So that's probably was a like a pretty crazy campaign season slash, and then I'm sure it had to be very stressful too, as he's going through the process, the appointment process, and you know all those hearings where some of them were quite funny, where he just told them to cram it essentially. It's like,
Those
but
were
he
some,
seems to be
yeah.
like a no nonsense, straight to the point type of guy.
No, he absolutely is. He's great. Definitely no nonsense. Definitely just wants what's best for the U.S. And its people. And honestly, you know, the whole process was wild. We've been together over 2 years now, so you know the kind of craziness of the election and everything was nothing new for us. The hearing process was fascinating. You're correct. It was stressful,
Mhm.
especially watching as a bystander, but. You know, he obviously, you know, I think crushed it, and you know, now here we are, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I thought, yeah, so Matt Gaetz was not confirmed, but so I do a political podcast, and you might think this is a political podcast. This is more of a hunting Second Amendment podcast, but I do one with my elk hunting buddy, and we were like going through all of Trump's appointments, and I didn't think he was going to get all of them across the finish line. And Hegseth and Cash and Pam Bondi and Tulsi, I thought one of them was going to get scrapped,
Mhm.
like that the Democrat, but no, he got all four of them, which just goes to show like we've got all the power right now, and the
Absolutely.
people voted for it. And you know, it's like the most ridiculous thing I've seen lately. So there was maybe one illegal that was not an illegal that was deported, and they're all screaming about one is too many. Guess what? One penis in a woman's locker room is too many, but you don't care about that.
Facts. That
Yeah.
is so true. No, that is so true. One, I mean, and it goes with all of their dumb policies that end up hurting the American citizen. It's they're screaming about one guy that gets deported by accident and yet to be proven. Like who
Mm-hmm.
knows? You know, they're obviously not just going based on people's tattoos as the left likes to tout as a headline. I mean, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. But if we really want to get down to it, you know, to your point, yes, one man in a locker room is too many. One Lake and Riley is too many. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, all of these things that could be preventable is just it's wild to me the total straw man arguments that they link onto and try and do a whodunit about. But these people are in there and doing their jobs effectively, and the American people that voted in the election and ultimately won even the popular vote are the people that are happy that the ship is being guided in this direction.
Hmm. No, absolutely. I'm here for it and enjoying it. Let's talk about guns. I know you like to shoot. Does Cash like to shoot?
He does, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. That sounds like a fun date. My wife does not like to shoot, and that will take us into women for gun rights here today.
That's true.
And
That's a great jumping off point.
yeah, and she's had her purse snatched literally in a Target parking lot, just
Oh my
in
gosh.
from the cart. Guy walks by, snatches it, jumps in a car. I'm like, okay. She felt violated, right? Like,
Right.
and and then I was like, you should start carrying, and she won't do it. And I don't know. It seems like there's a bunch of excuses, and maybe that's like these things have been ingrained into women's brains, like guns are dangerous, right? But
Hmm.
she won't carry, and or maybe it's that she thinks someone else might get access to her gun, and I know that's one of them too. She's told me.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, the Second Amendment really does protect women. And going back to males and women's locker rooms, well, we are not the same biologically, and men can overpower women physically pretty easily a lot of the time, right?
Yeah. No, you're
And that's
exactly right.
reality. Yeah.
I think that guns are the great equalizer for women to be able to carry. I know that especially in the climate, just elephant in the room is the political climate. They love to make guns sound like these big scary things. And in fact, there's a huge business behind creating weariness about guns. Just Bloomberg alone funds Moms Demand Action, the group created in the wake of the school shootings, at the tune of $60 million. So
Mm,
it's a profitable industry for the entities that want to make sure that gun-free zones exist, and they want to make sure that the people don't have access to or think they don't have access to their Second Amendment rights, which of course do not come from the government, they come from God. I mean, truly, the the lobby against guns is so massive. They're funding 501(c)(3)s, they're funding 501(c)(4)s. I mean, when you see people out there in their Moms Demand Action red shirts, which is why, we'll talk about women for gun rights, but which is why we do the 2A for teal, we do the teal shirts, is because when you're in a hearing and, your eye sees 20 people in red shirts, if you have a counterbalance to that, it's important to see that, it's not just the lobby against guns, but it's also the lobby for guns. And to your point, guns are a great equalizer for women to have. And the thing is, if you want to go get trained to carry, amazing. If you want to help advocate for or against gun-free zones, awesome. There's kind of a way to jump in at any point, at any comfort level, especially with the amount of things that are really stacked up against I mean, y'all know, I don't have to tell this audience, get stacked up against 2A. There's really a place for everyone, and then you can get comfortable from there. I think, especially for women, people's daughters, people's wives, it can be very hallowing to think that you don't have something to even things out, especially as people honestly get crazier. So,
mhm. Yeah, and I'm not. Uh, I don't know. I don't want to say I'm advocating for civil disobedience, but I mean, I'll be honest and say, gun-free zones when I'm picking my kids up from school, I don't care. Like it is what it is. Like
yeah,
that's the first place I'm taking a gun because it's the first
absolutely.
place people are targeting.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not saying go to a bar and have your piece on you and get drunk. That's totally different. But sometimes it's like common sense. Like no, and if I ever had to use it, people would be thanking me. Um, I mean, it's happened before. Forget what it was a principal. I think he went and got his gun out of his car, if I remember the story right,
yeah.
and neutralized the threat, and no charges were brought up against him. So,
Right. And I think that also as people see, lawfare in this country kind of come to a close. Hopefully, as we move forward, well, we know obviously with this administration that's not going to be the case. We're not going to see that lawfare, but I think as people can depend on that system, maybe they'll start to feel like they have more autonomy to defend their own family, be in gun-free zones, if that's something that they like. I think that people just need to know that doing the right thing is no longer going to cost them their freedom.
Hmm.
We saw it with the Daniel Penny case and how that resolved. Of course, that took way too long, but
Yeah.
I think that people will start depending on their own rights that they have as Americans again. I mean, if we start leaning on the Constitution, leaning on the laws that exist, not over legislating things, I hope that that's what happens. So I completely agree with you. I think it's more of the whole thing that people see those signs and they think they're going to get hauled away to jail if they do have their piece on them in them.
Hmm.
It's just a suggestion for criminals to visit those places and
Right.
enact violence and crimes.
Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about your upbringing, and I think it's important. Um, Jason told me that you grew up in Europe.
Yeah, so I grew up half in Europe, half in Arkansas.
Okay. And I mentioned Europe because there's not a country over there that has a Second Amendment.
Nope.
And apparently they don't have a First Amendment because you're seeing videos on social media of, I mean, even people like grandparent age people knock on the door. Hey, it's the cops. We're here to arrest you for something you posted on Facebook.
Yeah,
What?
for memes.
Yeah.
It's
Because
um
it,
it it's pretty ridiculous.
it hurt someone's feelings. So now you're going to jail.
Yeah, and it's sad that that's not an over exaggeration at all. That's exactly what's happening over there. The UK is absolutely out of order. Just in general, like we know that the Second Amendment defends the First Amendment. We've always known
Hmm.
this, but to really see it in action across the pond is crazy. I remember I was over there when I was young, and we had our house burglarized. And our neighbors acted as though that was just a normal thing, and the police acted like that was a normal thing. Of course, the
Hmm.
police over there, for those of you who don't know, aren't armed either. They have batons. Like it really is the upside down, and they kind of act as though, well, they burglarized it, but they didn't, they weren't armed. They didn't hurt you. So, like petty theft is just a thing. In Switzerland, we had grates that came over our windows at night and locked down on the first floor so that we wouldn't have petty theft,
Huh.
every month. It's pretty wild when you see the way that these people casually live and the whole, the meme phrase about, the European mind could never comprehend something, innately American, and it's funny because it's true.
Hmm.
And when I moved back and learning history and learning about the Constitution, learning about 1A, 2A, um, it really just struck me and gave me a great appreciation for the way that our country is. Of course, no country is perfect, but I like to think that America gets it much better than our counterparts overseas because they do not know how to control anything right now, and we're going to start to see even more of a tailspin because of it.
Yeah, it's going to be chaotic for sure, for sure. Which is why cleaning up our border was so important because that's where a lot of
Yes.
that is stemming from in Europe. Um, so, do you carry most days?
So it kind of depends. I travel a lot.
Yeah.
And I know that I can fly with it. I do understand everything with that. It's just a matter of where I'm going and where I'm linked to going. If I'm going to go to
Hmm.
Illinois and then California and then Texas, it's a different routing than
Yeah.
being able to carry it all the time. But in Nashville, um, of course, most places still here in town. In town's a little blue. In Nashville is a little blue. But in town, once you get 20 minutes outside, it's still the country here, which is great. So I carry when I can when I'm traveling. It kind of depends.
Hmm. And what is your EDC? What's your favorite pistol?
I like the P365.
Okay.
Um, but I also have the Glock 43X, which I also like.
Uh, awesome. Um, yeah, and I know you're not a hunter. You would go hunting though.
hmm
What would what species would appeal to you as far as like, okay, I'm gonna try hunting. What would you like to hunt?
I mean, I think from living in Arkansas, woo pig for sure, but I would help out with the boar problem. Because I think that I would feel like I was helping. Like
Mhm.
I would feel like, okay, cool, because I like wild game, but I don't eat it all the time. I'm really getting more into it. Cash is really into wild game, so I'm cooking it more and I'm into it now. So I feel like I'd feel better about that now. But yeah, I'd probably be into boar, birds.
Uh-huh.
I think that's where I'd start.
I mean, Arkansas is, famous for waterfowl tradition.
Hmm.
Stuttgart, yeah. Um, as far as Women for Gun Rights, when did this organization come about? Like, just give us a little history. Everyone's familiar with GOA, NRA, Firearms Coalition. I don't think everyone knows about Women for Gun Rights.
Yeah, so Women for Gun Rights was started in 2016. It started under the name the DC Project, and it was started by Diana Muller, who is a law enforcement veteran and a professional shooter, and really just under the necessity that, we needed something for people to understand that in the wake of the shootings, in the school shootings, in the wake of Moms Demand Action, there had to be a counterbalance. And I think that it started out very much an educational organization. And in 2023, they rebranded to Women for Gun Rights because there were all the Second Amendment, sanctuary cities. There were all of these things
Mm,
that were happening really that were anti 2A. And so to inform women of their constitutional rights, just like everyone else has, and inform men of the fact that an entity existed to help educate and shift policy when needed for their wives and daughters, that entity would exist. And so now Women for Gun Rights, as we start this kind of new chapter, we're of course in the educational space, but also in supporting policy. I think there's a lot, as you all I'm sure already know, there's a lot coming down the pipeline that we can likely fix that's not new legislation. It's just letting gun owners have the rights that they have under the Second Amendment. Of course, we
mm,
know that accessories should fall under the Second Amendment. All of these things that have kind of been attacked under the Biden administration. We have a chance to make sure that that never happens again and educate people on it and make sure that women know that they do have a great equalizer. That gun rights are all people's rights, and so
mm.
it's to involve them in the conversation and really enact a counterbalance against entities like Moms Demand Action, against the red shirts that show up that look like everyone hates guns. Well, it's not true. You have all of the women show up and they kind of it's a voting middle. I look at it too. It's really that suburban mom that the left works on, and we're not going to let them have them. So we're working in the policy space as well to help people understand that they don't have to succumb this demographic just to the Moms Demand Action total falsehood groups that exist.
And they're so well funded. Like you said, Bloomberg alone, $60 million. I
Yes.
compare that to on the hunting side, like, well, PETA, Humane Society, so well funded.
Yes,
They don't actually do
exactly.
anything except sue the government. That's it. And then the
Right.
government has to pay them back for the legal fees. It's absurd. But they
Yeah.
don't actually contribute to conservation
No.
at all.
No,
Um,
that's the thing is this side is definitely, you're totally right, is more of conservation, is more of even gun safety. If you don't educate people on anything, if you can't post a video of how to safely assemble, disassemble, clean, I don't know, store, how to visit a range for the first time, none of that content is acceptable on social media because it's been banned so far that people don't even make content like that, or they do, but it's not
nobody
they have to
sees it.
find exactly. It gets so censored. They have to find ways around it. They have to talk around it. That's the best way to make sure that something bad does happen with guns is to never talk about them.
Right.
And so with Women for Gun Rights, we have all these different aspects and ideas. We're so excited to move forward with some of the great work that they're doing and they have been doing. Diana's been doing amazing work for a long time. And so really just broadcasting that and having a policy arm to be able to help out with some of those suits and shout them from the rooftops too. We're excited to even just tell women, you are your own first responder. That's our biggest message is, you have the autonomy and the ability to protect yourself in scenarios that honestly the left has put us in. And some of these
Mm-hmm.
big conglomerates that fund organizations like Mom Demand Action have also funded, illegal immigration and some of these other NGO things that have created real problems for women in any really American, but especially women. So we want to be a counterbalance to that.
Where we're having a peaceful protest. Where did all these bricks come from? Who's like who's funding that?
Exactly. Like, oh, we have a new palette of shirts. That's amazing. We'll take a shirt. Yeah, it's a machine. It really is. And so to go against the machine, you have to have a good plan, a good strategy, good people, and work on funding. You don't need as much as the people that are funding entire conglomerates of fake news, but you do need some to help with policy and make sure that you're able to do the work that is going to help so much with the movement.
Mhm. But I understand it's free to join, so
It
you don't
is.
even yeah.
Yep.
So we'll take donations. We need them. But actually, if you and I think if you join, it'll come with maybe a newsletter, email blast, something that has educational content as a
Yes, we do
component of that.
educational video content. We're moving definitely further in that direction as well. You'll get newsletters, you'll get information. We're working to have resources of where you can go to train places that if you want to have a registry to look up where you can go in your state, we're working on that. Lots of things totally for free that are in the pipeline. So yeah, membership and joining is completely free.
Hmm. Why do you think, like, what is the biggest hurdle for someone, say, like my wife, and maybe this woman didn't have her purse snatched and didn't feel violated like that. But what is the biggest hurdle for them? Why are more women not exercising their Second Amendment right?
I think it can be a little bit intimidating. If I had to guess, just the overarching feeling is it is a little bit intimidating to think,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I have to, if you think about walking into an armory for the first time as a woman with no prior education, I kind of liken it to knowing nothing about, say, golf. You go, you feel really weird about picking up a club, you feel really weird about going to the course, hitting balls. Like how do you enter into this world? And that's not just because it's, male heavy. It's because it requires equipment, it requires training, and it requires education. And those, especially for the firearm side of things, that education and those different sections of learning about firearms and how to carry them safely and how to carry them every day and how to feel really confident about it, again, have been suppressed in the media. So I think, as you look at it, there's not a lot of examples of women carrying. There are some awesome accounts that I have seen, but again, those accounts get suppressed unless they pretend
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about anything but a gun. So I think it's just, you have to just get past the intimidation of it and find a community, which is again why we have Women for Gun Rights and why I'm so glad that women's nights at armories exist. And I think it's starting to come around, but I think it's kind of intimidating. And the counterculture, even if you completely are against it, the counterculture is strong. They make it sound very scary. They do make it sound like it's the gun's fault. Of course, we know it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's overall a little bit intimidating, and that's what we hope to demystifize and help out with.
Can I join as a man?
Absolutely. Yes. We welcome men, welcome fathers, husbands. I think it's helpful because our content is going to help with communication on how to get your wives, daughters, any women you care about involved. So men are welcomed and welcomed warmly.
And it's more than likely, and I don't have any statistical data to prove this, but I'm imagining most women, the first time they go to a gun range, it's with a guy. The
Hmm.
first time they go buy a gun, it's probably with a guy, right? So
Yep, that is
it isn't,
statistically true.
yeah. So it's important for us as men to support this organization as well. I have two young daughters, right? I am raising them. They shoot rifles. They have only 10, so they haven't shot handguns yet, but they know what a handgun is, know not to touch it when they see it, right? Um, and that drives my wife crazy, right? That they would even be access to a handgun. But you raise your kids a certain way,
Yep.
and I mean, everyone has to find their own lane as a parent, right? And I'm not saying we have just pistols laying around the house everywhere. We did up until we had kids, and then my wife was like, "You got to put the one on the nightstand has to at least go in like a little, I tried the one with the fingerprints. That one was a nightmare. So then I just got one with like a little 4-digit code.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that
yeah. The
one's
fingerprint one's always, I feel I've had some issues with those too.
yeah, it wasn't my favorite.
No.
But there are hunting rifles like in probably every room of the house, just like as they've spilled out of the capacity for gun safes, right? Like so, they see the guns, they shoot rifles, they know not to touch a handgun. The I would say and if anyone comes and robs my truck, I'm gonna be really pissed. But that's like the one place where yeah, it's not in a safe; it's just in the truck at all times, and they
Yeah.
know where it is, and they never would even dream of touching it. So
No, that's the thing. It's all in education and the way that you're raised, the way you're brought up. That's how I was brought up is, you see a gun, you're not going to touch it. And in
mm-mm.
fact, you're going to get in a lot of trouble if you even think about it.
Yeah,
So it's I think it goes back to demysticizing it too. You're not afraid of things that you understand. And so if you know, hey, you're this old, you can't touch this gun, you can't touch this unless your dad's around or unless, there's certain
yeah.
things that you can do. And it just comes back to, I believe in how you raise kids. I don't have kids yet, but I tend to think that that's the way to go about it. So
Yeah. Are we seeing, and you might have some stats to where you can answer this yes or no, but are we seeing more women buy guns than ever before?
we are, and it's really encouraging. We are seeing women feel, especially at the wake of really the end of the pandemic is when the spike
Mm.
began. And it's kind of, I think people of all kinds, we saw the general uptick in general, but I think that especially women saw, no one's gonna come to help me. I think that that's a little bit of a scary feeling too, or a big encouragement to be responsible for protecting yourself. You see these protests happen, you see these riots happen, you see 911 go down, and you say, if someone showed up at my door, I have nothing to protect me, that feels like it's on me. And I think it gives people a lot of ownership in their own personal safety. And that feeling is good. That feeling, I think, is encouraging to go to the next step, which, of course, is education and all of that, being able to carry, learning what you're doing with it, how. But I think in general, people said, you know what, that's it. I don't trust anyone but me to make sure that I'm showing up for myself. So we are seeing an uptick, which I think is great. And I think as that continues, the education aspect and the advocacy aspect is going to be huge.
How important is the NRA in your opinion? And I don't know, like if you're up to speed on their recent history with Wayne LaPierre and all that stuff, but I do know you're going to their annual meeting in Atlanta here in a couple weeks.
I
Um,
am. Yeah, I'm going to the
yeah.
and again going to the annual meeting, singing the national anthem. I think that it's been explained to me, like NRA 2.0 is something I've been hearing, and I know that that was said in one of their lawsuits in New York, and the New York Law Fair went crazy over it because they hated that. But
Mm,
I think that if they're listening to the people who have honestly criticized them in the past, which I understand, then I think that they're going to be in a good spot to be a helpful organization for gun owners and hunters. But I think that it's all going to be in really listening and moving forward with truly NRA 2.0. I know that their leadership's different. I know that their leadership's really keen on asking questions, listening to feedback. And as long as that continues, I'll head there and sing the national anthem. But
mm.
my first and foremost is 2A. So we'll definitely keep watching, but I believe in their leadership, and I believe that they're really focused on this NRA 2.0 concept.
And see, I wanted to ask you that um, before I told you. I did a 2 hour long episode with one of their board members, new board of director members. His
Hmm.
name's Jeff Knox, and
Hmm.
he reached out to me, and he was like, "Would you be willing to do an interview?" And I was like, "Well, to be honest with you, I'm not really a big fan of the NRA. Uh, I hadn't I let my membership lapse in 2014. And I told him this, and I was like, I'll do it, but only if we can talk about everything, all of the bad that's happened, and then you can explain to me why I should, renew my membership.
Yeah.
And I walked away from that conversation like sold, like, and I never publicly bashed the NRA because I think we need the NRA. It was just like my own personal stuff. I was just like, so I never publicly slammed them,
Hmm.
but I didn't support them either. But I think I'm getting closer to being like, I'm back in on the NRA, and it is because of that new direction of leadership. And a lot of these board members were the old watchdogs that were always calling foul on Wayne and his
Yeah.
cronies,
Yeah.
and they are finally now in a position of leadership, and he did say the NRA lost 1.5 million members over that, basically the scandal time period.
Yeah.
But still, they have 4.5 active members, 4.5 million active members currently, which is massive.
Yeah.
And so I think we are better with a healthy NRA. And organizations like Women for Gun Rights don't look at the NRA as a competitor.
No, not at all. I think this is one of those issues where you have to have, it's kind of like if the left started to rip down Moms Demand Action. I know it's a terrible analogy, but it's you have to kind of let the giants be the giants and let everything else, of course, call them out on their crap, as
Mm-hmm.
we've seen people do. And I'm glad that people are having conversations like the one you had. I've had some great conversations that have made me feel a lot better, which is why I answer that way as well. That I think that their leadership is really focused on switching things over. But you do have to have the titans, and then the people underneath that are focused on the individual issues,
Mm-hmm.
because we've seen it become a successful operation on the left for this pattern. And there are some things that they're very bad at. There are things that they're very good at, and sticking together is one of them. And so I think that if we can have these conversations, I'm a huge advocate for communication, for open dialogue. I think that it fixes most problems. Then I think that, I think we need the Titans, and I think it's good that we're all sticking together.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so as we're just wrapping things up here, free to join for anybody.
Mhm.
What is the website? I mean, you can just Google Women for Gun Rights, but what is the actual website?
The website is womenforgunrights.org, and it is again free to join. You know, you will get a newsletter. We have a lot of video content coming. We have a lot of educational resources coming. Lots of policy announcements, and we're really excited to reach out to the community and help people understand why it's completely necessary for women to have a great equalizer.
You know who's getting signed up? My wife, by me. I'm not even going to tell her. She's just going to start getting the emails, and I'm like, you need to pay attention to this stuff.
I
Uh,
love it. I love it. Well, and that's the thing is we want to make it approachable. We don't want
mm,
it to seem um, difficult to go. I know, it's funny because when I first started in, I was like, okay, women for gun rights, I don't want it to sound intimidating to women because it's a women's group. And
mm,
that's the thing is we want to stress is it's not a women's group. It's for everybody. If you're
yeah.
getting the newsletter and you see something that's helpful, amazing. If you forward it on to your wife or daughter or whoever else, or any other woman in your life that you care about, great. If you sign them up and don't tell them about it, even better.
Yeah. Well, that's what's going to happen to Aaron. And I'm going to join too. Now, it's free, but money is important. So we can just make a donation on the website if we feel inclined to do so.
Yes, again, absolutely free. If you feel so inclined, there is a donate button on the website. It's pretty self-explanatory, and we're going to put a lot of it to good use here soon with watchdogging some of this policy, hopping on some lawsuits, and really making sure that we have a presence there as well. So that would be amazing. But again, don't feel pressure. If you can, great. If you just want to donate, or if you just want to join for free, then that's perfectly great too.
Awesome, awesome. And so, in just closing here, people can follow you at Alexis Wilkins on Instagram, Facebook as well.
Yes,
Okay.
Facebook, Twitter, or X. I always do that. Facebook, X, Instagram. It's all at Alexis Wilkins.
And that's not just gun related content. You'll see some good old fashioned country music. You'll see other political commentary on fighting against this woke ideology that I think I was thinking they were going to take a cue and just back off of it, but I don't know. It seems like they're full throttle, and it's wild
I don't know
times.
I don't know if they've just gone too far in the direction and they just, it's like things in motion pick up motion, or some strategy company somewhere is just making too much money by telling them to keep going further in the direction. And they have some destination that they don't know about yet, but
Yeah.
um, I don't know. It's
Well,
not working.
good for us.
Yeah, we'll take it. Keep going.
All right, Alexis. Well, hey, thanks for the time and for giving us the lowdown on women for gun rights today, and for being an advocate for women everywhere, and for them to exercise their Second Amendment right. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care.
Thanks. You too.